Hello to the chess improvers out there. This is Adult Chess Improver and Adult Chess Trainer Rich, and today we're going to be looking at a game played by Boris Spassky back in 1984 against Dweckstein. And Spassky's white in this game and actually has a tactical blow delivered to him by his opponent. So we're going to take a look at that today. And one of the goals of this video is to help you improve your tactical vision, your visualization, and kind of go through the steps at how we arrive at the best move and the solution to, let's call this a puzzle, right? It's black to move, all right? So if you want to start looking at the position and start thinking about some candidate moves for black, that's your first step. You could argue that's your first step. I mean, your first step, you can kind of assess the position, kind of look at some of the different elements of the position, like king safety, space, things like that. So, and then, of course, when we're looking for tactics, we're looking at checks, captures, and threats. And so, I'll give you a second here if you need to pause the video to kind of assess the position and see who you think's better and start looking at some candidate moves based on some tactics. All right, so hopefully you've had a chance to look at it. And one of the things I do when I'm looking at a puzzle or a position like this, besides maybe doing an assessment of things like piece activity and some of those elements like time and development, is I kind of just get a general sense of what jumps out at me. So in this position, for some reason, when I first looked at it, what jumped out at me was the two knights sort of looking at each other here. And that was, I said, okay, these knights can capture each other. There's some tension there. The black knight seems to be well defended by this pawn here, this bishop, this knight. And this knight over here is defended by that pawn right there. So not as well defended, but defended by a pawn nonetheless, or so it appears. We'll just go through some of the tactical thinking. We're not going to do a full assessment of the position and all the different elements. That could be for another video. But if you're looking for a tactical blow here and you're looking at candidate moves, you do want to look at probably first and foremost checks, and that includes checks from both sides. So it's not just checks that you can deliver on your opponent, such as like here's a check here, rook to h3, check, and king takes rook, and then you look for follow-up. But it's also but you're also looking for checks that your opponent can deliver on you. And this is super important because you could be looking at tactical combinations and doing calculation. You might overlook a check that your opponent can throw in on you and kind of disrupt your whole combination. Okay, that happens a lot for beginner to intermediate players. I've experienced that myself many, many times. So again, one of the goals of this channel, of the content here, is to help people improve at chess. And what are the things that we're overlooking? What are the mistakes that we're making? And a big mistake that I personally made a lot was overlooking my opponent's threats, especially checks that they can throw in. Remember, a check is going to take priority over any other move, no matter which you have some kind of combination that, let's say, doesn't involve checks, right? You think you're going to win a queen or something, and your opponent throws in a check and just throws a wrench into all your plans. So we're looking at checks from both sides, okay? And so that's one of the first steps that I recommend everybody do when you're evaluating, assessing, calculating, visualizing. You're going through your procedures, right? So just going back here, let's look at this check here that we can deliver on our opponent with this rook to h3. Now you think, why would we play this? Because the king's just going to take the rook. And you do need to look at it because a lot of times there are tactics that involve moving the king onto a square where a secondary tactic or follow-up tactic can be delivered. So this is a theme, a motif that happens in a lot of puzzles. So in this situation, the next question we want to ask is, okay, if we play rook to h3, king takes h3, do we have a follow-up as black? So let's see, king would be on h3, which is a light square. We have a light squared bishop here on d7, but there's really no line to the king here. We can't push this pawn up or something like that and deliver a check or come up with some skewer on the king or a fork, let's say a knight fork or something like that. So this position's pretty closed. Most of black's pieces are over here on the left side of the board. So on the queen side. So there's not a lot of follow-up that you see here, but we do need to look at that and think about those things. Okay, so any other checks here? Does our opponent have any checks that they can deliver upon us? And it doesn't appear that they do. Okay, so that's good. That means our combination won't be so easily disrupted. Okay, so we looked at the checks. Next thing we're going to look at is captures. So the first thing that popped in my mind when I looked at this puzzle that jumped out at me were these two knights. And so I do want to look next at, let's say, knight takes d4. So all right, that knight is defended by the pawn on c3. So if knight takes d4, c takes d4, and what do we get out of that? Not much, except one thing you might have overlooked, and I know I did, and it's one of the keys to this puzzle here, is noticing this bishop and queen are on the same diagonal, and they are sort of looking at each other. And you can even say that the bishop is x-raying the queen, and the queen is x-raying the bishop. So sort of they're looking at each other. There's something in the way. Once that piece moves out of the way, they will be attacking each other. Okay, so super important when you're doing your puzzles. Don't just look at pieces that are, let's say, in contact with each other, but kind of look through to the, through other pieces. And this is going to be important for developing and getting better, is to start looking at these x-rays that are in the positions. So if knight, it's black to move, if this knight takes on d4 and c takes d4, it is going to open a discovered attack on our queen. And remember, this bishop, or notice this bishop is defended by white's queen on d1, so we can't just take that bishop there. We would probably need to do something like retreat the queen or find some other intermediate move or block that attack. But we would be sort of the one being attacked, so to speak, in that situation, and we would probably hand over the initiative to white there. So doesn't look so promising to take the knight on d4. However, really important is when you have a candidate move, like this is a candidate move, and we decide we're not going to play that candidate move, it doesn't mean we just dismiss that move altogether in our combination. This may show up later in the combination. So there's something I call transpositional thinking, which is switch the order up of your moves, and a lot of times that will get you to the solution. It's also called reciprocal thinking. I've seen it called that before. But if we switch up the order of moves, sometimes we can arrive at the solution that way. So we are going to keep this knight capture in the back of our mind. Kind of don't forget about it there. It may be down the line, second or third move in a combination possibly. And the same would apply to, let's say, checks as well. Like rook to h3, we did sort of throw it out of our candidate moves for a first move, but we don't want to automatically just dismiss that as a possibility for a follow-up move. Okay, so what else? What other captures do we have? We had knight captures d4. We also have this rook, which is on this open file here, attacking the bishop on h1. Well, that bishop appears to be defended, well defended actually, not just by this queen here, But again, you're looking at x-rays, right? And the rook on a1 defends it a second time. So it appears that the bishop on h1 is really well defended. However, if we go through and put this idea together with our previous idea of this knight attacking on d4 and the pawn taking on d4 and the x-ray between the queen and the bishop, and that bishop was guarded by the queen, we notice that the queen was guarding the bishop on d2 as well as the bishop on h1. So this should set off red flags for you. We have one piece that's defending two other pieces, and that's what's called an overloaded piece. So the queen is said to be overloaded by defending these two bishops. Okay, so how can we exploit that? Well, we want to attack one of those pieces and basically divert the queen over to where it's not defending the other piece anymore. So this is often called a deflection or a decoy. It has other names too. Maybe there's subtle differences, attraction. So if we analyze this capture a little further here, rook takes h1, deflecting the queen over to recapture. And it looks like we're down in exchange, but then keep in mind, we haven't forgotten about this as a follow-up move. Knight takes d4, pawn takes d4, and remember this queen and bishop were x-raying each other. This bishop no longer has the defense of the queen since it's been deflected over to h1, and now we have our solution. So we're going to put it all together here. And by the way, if you're enjoying this content, please hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. All right, to conclude here, this is what happened to Spassky as he was playing the white pieces in this game. This rook captures h1, and queen takes h1. Sorry, let's do that again. Rook takes h1, queen takes h1. Queen gets deflected. Now the knight on c6 can take the knight on d4. Pawn takes, and then queen can now capture the undefended bishop on d2. And then at the end, you want to evaluate and say, okay, did I win material here? Is this a better position? So what are we getting out of this? Well, we lost a rook, but we gained two bishops. So generally speaking, two minor pieces for a rook is considered a favorable exchange, and it's a winning tactic. And in this game, it ended up being a decisive factor, which gave black a winning advantage, and black went on to win the game. So hope you enjoyed this video and the content. Again, if you did, please hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.